Welcome to the Corporate Baddie podcast, your go-to resource for real talk, hard-earned wisdom, and actionable insights from women who are transforming the advertising and media landscape. I'm Jen Werner, your host. After spending 20 years in the media and advertising tech space, I now channel my expertise into recruiting and consulting across the corporate landscape, helping businesses navigate complex challenges and seize new opportunities. So whether you're climbing the ladder or already reaching the upper echelons, we're going to dive into the journeys, the challenges, and the triumphs that define what it means to be a true corporate baddie. I'm excited to welcome Ali Ghost to today's podcast. She's a seasoned quick serve restaurant marketing leader with over 15 years of experience. She has a track record of transforming challenger brands into category leaders. After nearly a decade at KFC, she drove 8 years of same store sales growth and launched the $5 Phillips. She now serves as Zaxby's Vice President of Brand Strategy, poised to elevate the brand into industry leader status. Since joining Zaxby's, Ali has revitalized marketing. She's leading key initiatives like the Mr. Beast collaboration and the fried chicken Philly launch. She's had a new agency search under her belt and also a complete brand refresh. Her shift from food-only TV spots to culturally relevant campaigns has set new standards for excellence. Her leadership has not only propelled Zaxby's sales, but positioned it for the next IT brand in the fast food industry. Ali lives here in Atlanta, and she's with her husband and 5-year-old daughter. She loves to work out and is currently taking her love of boxing to a new level by becoming a certified boxing instructor. Please welcome Ali. Ali, thank you for joining us today on the podcast, The Corporate Baddie. Really excited to have you here.
Excited to be here. Thanks, Jen. Looking forward to it.
Great. Well, to kick things off, I think we've given you a nice little introduction and tee up, but it would really be amazing if you can share with our listeners today a little bit about your journey and how you got into this industry of media and advertising.
Yeah, it was one much like a Candyland game board. It was a little all over the place for a while, but I eventually found my footing. Well, I guess personally, the most important things to me, I am a mom of a almost 6-year-old daughter. So empowering women and raising strong women for the future is super important to me. My daughter has more personality and grit than anyone I know. So world watch out for Molly. But yeah, I'm a mom. I'm a wife. I have a great husband who is incredibly supportive. We are a 2-career household, which keeps it interesting, but he has been very supportive in letting kind of my career lead our decisions and opportunities that I've had lead where we live and where we've gone. So huge thanks to him. He's a great dad, very involved, everything like that. So I'm very fortunate to have my little family, my little family of 3. My journey has again been a little all over the place. I always like to start really far back because I think that this is important to just understanding me as a person and kind of where I get my own grit that I have. I grew up in the poorest town in the poorest county in Indiana, which is one of the least wealthy, least educated states in the United States. And I don't say that to get sympathy. I say that because I think as a woman, we face uphill climbs. And a lot of times I think that I faced an additional one, right? Like trying to, number one, make a life for myself bigger than my small town. But the second thing is being proud of where I come from and not shying away from the experiences that made me who I am. So I grew up in a very small town in Indiana. My mom was a teacher. And so education was so important to her. And she was the first woman in my entire family, up until that point to graduate college and go to grad school. And she's still one of the smartest people I know. Teachers also are one of the hardest professions and least appreciated professions. They deserve to be corporate baddies. They are baddies. So I grew up, with a very high standard for myself in terms of education and making sure that I learned as much as I could and absorbed as much as I could over the years. When it came time to go to college and when I was in high school, remembering back, I had to do a project of what I wanted to be one day. And I said I wanted to be a Tusa Rubinstein, who, if you recall, she was the editor of 17 magazine.
Oh, wow.
And I wanted to be a magazine editor in the fashion or like beauty space. That's what I was, gung-ho set on, to live in New York and be, a Baddie magazine editor. I went to school at Ball State University, which is a very strong journalism school. The David Letterman School of Journalism is the actual name of the school. Went to Ball State for a journalism degree specializing in magazine journalism. I graduated in 2009. And for those of us who were born in the 1900s and remember, entering the career field in 2009, it was a huge recession. Jobs in the creative industry were few and far between. And I had this journalism degree. I was freelancing for some local publications, making very little. I was interviewing constantly at agencies, even for junior account positions that made like $25,000 a year, and losing out to them to people who had been downsized from other agencies who had multiple years of experience. And here I was, pretty green, 22 years old. And so I'll be honest, I panicked for a little bit. I had been used to being successful, and here I was facing this huge adversity in terms of getting any career. And it was very humbling, right? Like, I think that was a lesson of, I was always at the top of my game, top of my class, president of this, head of that. And I was having a hard time getting a job, and it was very uncomfortable for me. And so I did, and I don't regret any decisions. It's why I'm here today. I'm a big believer in, you take a path and it leads you to a completely different place. And so I did take an opportunity to go into what I call the family profession, which is teaching. Again, teachers come up a lot in my life, probably because every woman in my family, including cousins, aunts, are in the field of education besides me.
Wow.
I'm the D factor. So I went and I taught high school for a year. And quickly realized, I think within 2 or 3 weeks, I had already been like, one and done. I'm going to finish this year out, and then I'm going to go back to school. So I used that time to study for business school entrance exams, apply to business school, go through that whole process. And so in the next year, I ended up getting into the business school at the University of Louisville, again, from Indiana, Louisville area. And that was a very interesting program because they had a marketing concentration. I knew that I could probably pivot my creative skills that I had gained in writing and design through journalism into a career in marketing. So I went into that with the marketing concentration. The interesting thing about that program as well was that there was an internship component. And so I automatically had a job, an MBA level job, where I was making some money, able to, cash flow my way through school, and also get my MBA. So that was great. And really gave me the business skills, I think, to round out what was, I think, from a resume perspective, and when I was interviewing perspective, this is a very creative person, to this is somebody that understands both the business side and the creative side, which will come up probably later in my career. And it's what I do today, is kind of balance those two sides of the coin. But I finished that program, got a job at Humana, a healthcare company, in marketing. The first form of marketing I ever worked on, which this is like comedic in the age of where we are now, 15 years later, was in mail marketing, direct mail. The most. So I was sending, your grandparents, your great grandparents, their buy Medicare through Humana spam mail. You're welcome, everyone. So did that for a year, and then got some great advice from a mentor that I had met through my MBA program, of, if you really want to get into marketing, and you're on the corporate side, and I could have stayed corporate at Humana and grown through there, but they had an inkling that I wanted to do something a little more creative than healthcare. And they said, go to an agency, spend a year or two at an agency. It is the best boot camp that you can get. And you can always go back into corporate marketing, or you can stay at an agency and take that path. So I did go to an agency briefly for about a year and a half. I was and this is going to age me. I don't like aging myself, Jen, but it's going to age me.
Keep going.
I'm young, right? Chemicals, we have so much technology now to keep us looking young. I was the first social person this agency ever hired. And when I started working in social media, it was literally Facebook and Twitter. That was it.
Yeah.
And I was also the first person that a lot of my clients, I was the social lead on AutoZone. We worked with Carnival Cruise Lines, a lot of regional brands, Fruit of the Loom. So some big brands, but they also were like, how do you social?
Mhm.
And I was like, exactly right. Nobody knows right now. KPIs and social weren't a thing. And so that was an interesting time to be in a position that was new pretty much to the world of
Mm.
social media marketing. Um, I loved what I was doing there, but I had an opportunity that to go back to the corporate side. I respect agency people. I work with agencies every single day. And I'm not saying one is better than the other, but I think I am built for corporate. For corporate for a lot of reasons. I really like focusing on one brand and one thing versus, when I was at the agency, I had 9 different accounts that I was managing. So that was a lot. It was like multiple personality disorder. Am I talking about steak right now, or am I talking about cruises? Am I
Mhm.
talking about tanning beds? That's again how long ago I was in marketing. Is marketing tanning beds was still a thing too. Um, so I got an opportunity with Yum Brands, which is the parent company for KFC, Taco Bell, and Pizza Hut. And I always wanted to work for a bright and shiny brand. And I said, hey, going into this company is going to be my opportunity to get to a bright and shiny brand. Didn't necessarily love working in fast food. I was a reformed vegetarian. I'm not a vegetarian now, but I was at the time. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to take the opportunity to go work for Yum and make an impact in this space. Um, I went to work for Yum in, again, their first social role, social listening. That was the hot thing then. Like we had learned about Facebook and we had learned about Twitter, and Instagram was coming out, and people decided that we needed to start listening on social and monitoring and getting insights and all of that from social conversation. So my first job at Yum was to do that basically for the world of Yum. I worked with every business unit. I worked with every brand across Yum. And so just had this amazing opportunity to learn about marketing across different cultures, learn about marketing different brands, especially the 3 iconic brands that we had in our portfolio. So it's just an amazing opportunity. And again, I was the first person to do the role, and that's going to come up several times. First person to do the role. I had the opportunity then. I got recruited over to Kentucky Fried Chicken to work for someone that I was just really excited to learn from. And that person, and maybe he listens to this podcast, is Kevin Hochman, who's now the CEO of Brinker International. He was just named #1 restaurant CEO of 2024.
Wow.
So and I don't think that was the first time he had been on this list. I think he had previously been on it for KFC, and now he's like on it again for Brinker. And I had the opportunity to just soak up marketing from the person that, worked on the Old Spice campaign, somebody that had worked for P&G for years and had done amazing things for brands. And I knew he was going to do it for KFC. So I wanted to be a part of that. When I went to KFC, I was very junior. And this was the first time I was really allowed to show the 2 sides of my brain, being understanding businesses and how they make money, and be profitable and marketing at the same time. So it was blending that right and left as a brand manager there. Again, got a lot of great opportunities. I was very lucky to have the leaders that I had to give me these opportunities. I led a small thing at KFC. Again, this is so long ago, but it was huge back then. It was $5 fill-ups, which ended up becoming a $1 billion category within the KFC portfolio. And that was my first product.
Wow.
I spent almost 10 years at KFC, and throughout that time, again, was very supported. I got promoted 7 times in 9 years at Yum. So really just kind of took off. And by the time I left Yum, I was leading all the brand calendar strategy. I was leading the innovation strategy, and then I was leading basically if our sales were doing well or not, right? And that was a huge job, to be a little mini GM of KFC US, which at the time was on 8 years of same store consecutive sales growth, just like this big growth engine. Um, and once I got to a certain point, I had something to prove to myself. And that was that I really wanted to prove to myself that I can, #1, leave Kentucky, leave the area where I had lived my whole entire life. And 2, that I could be in a different industry besides fast food. So I had an awesome opportunity to go work for people that I had worked with at Yum Brands previously at Carter's, the kids clothing company. That brought me to Atlanta, which is my new home. It's a great city. Love it here. And got to, again, work on some iconic brands. I ran the brand team for Carter's, which is the #1 most trusted baby clothing brand. I got to run the brand campaigns for Oshkosh Bagosh. We did a really cool partnership with Gucci while I was there. We called it Bagucci. And got to run those big iconic brands. I was only there for about a year though. But did some cool stuff while I was there. And then realized, whenever you do cool stuff, people come knocking, and I was not looking for the opportunity to come to Zaxby's, but it was, again, one of those incredible opportunities in the food space with a brand that I could see so much potential in and so much upside that I had to be a part of it. I get really bad FOMO when somebody reaches out about a role and I'm like, should I do it? Should I not? And so I just did it. I took the leap again. So now that was a very long-winded way of like saying my story, but now I'm the vice president of marketing at Zaxby's and have a lot of different things under my belt. I'm the brand strategy leader for our Zaxby's. About 1,000 restaurants, 3 billion annual sales a year. So very healthy, like AUVs for our restaurants. It's a very healthy business. Run the brand strategy side. I run the calendar planning side. So how we're going to promote things, what we're going to do, how we're going to make money. I run the whole advertising side as well, all the creative agency relationships. And then I also run the culinary team, which everybody should be jealous of, because there are literally days where I get to come home and say, I got to try a bunch of new milkshakes today.
Right. Rough job.
It's horrible. It's like, and
Yeah.
my husband will be like, I was on calls all day. What did you do? And I said, well, I ate potato chips and chicken and milkshakes, and they were great.
And I got paid for it too.
And yeah, I didn't pay for it. So it's a really fun time at Zaxby's, and we have so much upside. We have great teams, great leaders, and it's going to be a rocket ship.
I can only imagine what you're doing right now. And we're going to get into that in a minute, but I do just want to step back a little bit because your career progression is so interesting. And I think it's important for those that are looking to get into this industry to understand, like, it's okay to make pivots. And I
Definitely.
think you got some really great career advice along the way when it was recommended that you step into an agency world, get experience there. And then, of course, you've made some of your own by choice, whether
Mhm.
that was following someone that you thought was just absolutely great and wanted to learn by, or you wanted to step outside of the QSR industry and just do something new and bold and different. But all of these changes or pivots in your career really helped the trajectory of your career.
Mhm.
And I think that's an important lesson for the next gen to take away. But even more so for those that are maybe mid-level executives right now that are saying, hey, I just don't know if I'm up for this anymore. Am I still in
Mhm.
love with this? Or should I
Mhm.
maybe try something different? I think it's encouraging to hear that, like, step into it, right? Like, lean
Mhm.
into that and see where it takes you. Um,
Yeah, exactly. And I think, I did that, right? I left food for 13 months and went into retail, which an e-commerce driven retail business is also not for the faint of heart. QSR has the word quick in it, quick service restaurants. It is not as fast as e-commerce retail, let me tell you. And so I do think that that's important, right? Like, you can always go back to the industry you love. You shouldn't let that stop you from trying something else, because the industry will probably always be there and you can come back to it. And I've honestly found that that little divergence into another industry, another category, another type of consumer has served me well in QSR. And I think that, I get calls like about recruiting, and people always find that mixture of like, I'm a QSR girly. I will say that. I just have leaned into it. I'm a food person. But recruiters and other people I talk to say, hey, it's awesome that you have that e-commerce retail experience too, because you understand how those businesses live and die by being able to drive traffic to websites, et cetera. And the food industry is moving that way too. Like, digital third party is becoming an even bigger part. And so don't think that you have to stay in one industry. If that's the industry you're in love with, you can learn things from others and always come back.
I love that. Your
Yeah,
skills are transferable. And
exactly.
I absolutely couldn't agree more. You referenced 12, 15 years ago with the start of social and you stepping into that role and nobody really understanding what social was, how to measure it. I think that's kind of like where we're at again, like with
Mhm.
AI and so many other things, right? From a technology perspective. I mean, when I even think about like podcasting, while podcasting's been around for some time, it hasn't really been mainstream as it is today. Gaming, another, place that I think we're starting to see a lot of brands start to insert themselves. And so let me ask you this as a marketer, somebody that always needs to be in the know or
Mhm.
ahead, where do you get your information to stay relevant or to stay ahead?
I think it's a lot of talking to other people. And again, I stay very close to past mentors and people I respect, and it's a lot of picking people's brains. I have several people I can call up and say, "Hey, what are you thinking about this?" So don't discount people to people relationships because you can exponentially and take more information because they're listening to other things and you can learn from them. It's kind of like a sponge. I honestly, I learn a lot from TikTok in terms of, what's going on. I think my algo is just so refined and it gets me so much that you get snippets of podcasts about marketing, you get snippets about podcasts about brand building and all of these different things in a 1 minute long format, which sometimes that's all I have time for. And so I would say if you can find those things that you can quickly do, even if it's spending 5 minutes a day trying to catch up on something, that's the way to go. If it's a quick text on somebody to say, "Hey, I saw that you guys are doing this. Like, would you?" If it's a brand that's like not a competitor, obviously,
Right.
but say, "Hey, I saw you guys were doing this thing. How did that work out? Is there any tips I could pick up from that?" I'm big on like personal relationships, and that's where I get a lot of industry insights. Honestly, just being in this industry as long as I have been, TikTok's a great one. I would say for other sources, I love Ad Age. I do a frequent of Ad Age just to see what's going on, see what other brands are doing. Those are really the main ones.
Yeah. I love
Uh,
that you said people because
yeah.
I think that's something that nobody really has spoken about, at least yet, through the course of my interactions with this podcast. And I don't think it's not that they're not doing it. They're probably just not like recalling it to be a place where they're really getting a lot of their information. But that's so powerful because connections, people, your network, they are kind of your everything when it comes
Mhm,
to business, right? Whether that's through just what you spoke about, just getting information, or if it's helping you maybe with your career journey, mentorship. There's unlimited types of benefits you get out of that human connection
mhm,
and
mhm.
network.
And you can even within your four walls. Like as an example, I have never really owned media in my career, and I want to be a CMO of a large company, and you got to know about media. And so I have a great relationship with my peer at Zaxby's who runs media, who was previously at Coke, and I think that part of it is to be able to learn from other people, and some people are more sensitive to this. You have to show vulnerability that you don't know something.
Yeah.
And my personality is if I don't know something, I'm going to lean in on it and I'm going to ask for help. Because that's okay. And maybe that's some advice I would give for my younger self, which was like, I thought I had to be 10 out of 10 all the time and I had to know everything to be the best. And the truth is that having that vulnerability and being able to lean on other people, to teach and help you grow and admitting you don't know everything is like such a power.
Yes.
Um, and so if I have a question about media or how something's going, just to educate myself, I'll just go ask the question and have that vulnerability to say, "I don't know about this. Can you teach me about this? Because you know about this."
Yes, exactly. And that's the best career advice to
Mhm,
give to anyone listening at any part of their journey. So, okay, you stopped at Zaxby's kind of as you stepped into this role, but You've done a lot in the time that you've been there.
Yeah.
And I'm really excited to dive into that because as a mother myself, I have a 12-year-old son who is all about Mr. Beast. And when
Oh yeah.
that debuted, it was get to Zaxby's right away. And to be honest, I won't say the competitor, but Zaxby's is our number one now. And it is amazing what the power of a collab can do for a brand. So I'm curious to how that came about. Was that something that was presented to you? Is it something you thought up with your team? Just a little bit through that process would be great.
Yeah. So the Mr. Beast opportunity, again, it was one of those random things, and I'm not quite sure how it happened, but my boss came in one day and was like, "Hey, do you know who Mr. Beast is?" And I'm going to be really honest, and I hope that team does not take offense. I am not a 12-year-old boy. And I said, he's the guy that like gives people $50,000 randomly, right? And that was who he was a long time ago. And he's become this huge media entity, the number one YouTuber in the world. And after I Googled him, I'm like, he wants to work with little old Zaxby's? Okay. And it turns out that, the Mr. Beast office is in North Carolina and his team loves Zaxby's. There's a Zaxby's 2 miles away from their office. And so they already loved the brand. And whenever it was brought as an opportunity for them and to us, it was like, yeah, let's work together. Um, that's another thing too. Like sometimes you just get really lucky. But personally, I didn't know who he was, and so I probably didn't have the reaction. But what I did is I asked my nephew, who at the time was 14, and I said, "Hey, do you know this guy?" And he said, "You don't know this guy?"
Right.
And I knew there we had something, right? Because we were looking for a way to break through. The QSR industry is one that is hyper competitive, especially in the chicken space. You have Raising Cane's, you have Chick-fil. I was like, what's another one? Chick-fil-A, of course. Um, Brands like KFC, which like are we don't really see too much as a competitor anymore. No offense to the KFC folks down there, but like Cane's and Chick-fil-A and brands like Slim Chickens that are growing exponentially. Wingstop, I mean, they opened 200 restaurants last year.
Oh, we
Wingstop,
love Wingstop.
we have to find a way to outshout them.
Yeah.
So as an example, Raising Cane's, let's use Raising Cane's. Raising Cane's is a fully company owned entity. They build hundreds of restaurants a year. And if you take like an ad fund or a percentage of sales as an ad fund, even though they don't have an ad fund because they aren't franchised, their percentage of spend from advertising, they can essentially grow their ad spend every year by more than Zaxby's has to spend
Wow.
total because of their growth.
Mm-hmm.
And Zaxby's is a 30-year-old brand. We grow a little bit slower. We are a fast-growing brand, but not compared to these brands that are building hundreds of stores a year backed by private equity. Like it's just a different ballgame.
Okay.
And when you can't I think that saying they're spending more and there's no way that we can beat them that's not a productive thought, because you can be outspend, but you can also be more creative. You can be more breakthrough. And when this opportunity fell in our lap, I'm like, this is one that is not going to get to, like, if Kane saw this, they would take it. It's not being presented to them. It's being presented to us. And I knew that if we could make this happen, we were going to be able to kind of defy the industry in terms of probably traffic growth, especially brands like McDonald's, the traditional QSRs that you think of. And so I was like, we got to do it. The partnership, again, it was one that it gave us a audience that had never heard of Zaxby's, or Zaxby's wasn't on their radar, and it just propelled them into the forefront. We had a huge opportunity with families with kids, and this one was like on the nose. Like you said, Jen, like your son was, we have to go to Zaxby's, and that's the story we heard over and over and over. You could even see it like during the week, Fridays after school, or even after school let out, you could just see the sales of Beast boxes, like boom. And it was like the kids are out of school, boom. Kids are out of school, boom. And so that was super interesting to see. And that really helped us last year in terms of our sales. It helped us in terms of our social follower growth. We got like double social growth than what we normally got. And we also were pretty creative on the back end of creating a product, the Beast Box, which my team also owns the product development, we were driving multiple points of traffic over the industry, not by price, not by $5, not by $1, but by a meal that cost $13.
Yeah.
And people were like, take my money.
Absolutely amazing.
So we were able to grow traffic. We were able to grow check. We were able to grow brand metrics with consumers. So that was one of those once in a lifetime moments where it just all worked. We weren't sacrificing profit to get traffic. We weren't sacrificing traditional ad spend to do this. Like, we did have to take money from traditional media, but one thing that I think is really changing is it's not just about like TRPs anymore, television reach points, or about impressions. Like, you have to take into the account when you're doing partnerships like this, the media value of that partnership. So we extrapolated how much we thought if we had to get the same amount of reach from a media dollars perspective from what we were getting in the Mr. Beast contract, what would that look like? And it was a huge media value. And I think that that's something that marketers are going to have to reconcile, is with these partnerships. Unless you're a brand that hasn't traditionally done TV, it's that money is going to have to come from somewhere, and it's likely going to have to come from traditional marketing dollars that you're used to saying, like, year over year media spend is up or down. Like, it's going to be different, and we're trying to work our way through that too. How do you take those influencer or partnership impressions and add them to your media plan to see what truly is happening, even though you're spending less on traditional channels? But that's like a puzzle. Again, this is like a new thing, right? And it's really blown up with social media. But I honestly think that partnerships and influencer programs and marketing is where at least Zaxby's marketing is going.
Great.
And we're putting so much effort behind this year.
So let me ask you, you called it a once in a lifetime moment, but how do you make that sustainable? How do you thread that through the course of time?
Yeah, I think that, whenever we said, what are we going to do after Mr. Beast? And I was like, there are very few people that you could partner with that are bigger than him, like maybe Taylor Swift. I'm a Swiftie. But we're working on it, right? And I think that was something last year we talked about, is like 2025, lapping that's going to be, it's not going to be easy. But fortunately, we have a great team, and we have a great financial team that's helping us figure out, like, it's not just going to be one thing. It's going to be multiple building blocks that probably get us to beat what happened last year. But we have some great partners, and we are really sprinting toward, instead of just having, the one big influencer moment we had this year, to have multiple throughout the year that hopefully will equate to something similar to the Beast effect of it all.
And maybe you're reaching different audiences with each of those.
Exactly. Yeah. We are good with like the 12 to 18-year-old males. And that is something that we're taking into account, is how do we reach new groups of people? And maybe instead of one influencer, you have 10, and more of a programmatic thing that tap into 10 micro communities or 10 different communities to, again, spread that traffic around, because more people can love Zaxby's. One thing I will say about the brand and the product, it is so beloved in the Southeast. It is a if you know kind of place, where people that grew up in Atlanta or surrounding areas is like, Zaxby's is the best. Like, Raising Cane's is not as good. And people will say that, and it's amazing to hear that. And the people who haven't tried Zaxby's, like, those are just people that we need to get their attention to bring them in so they can get into the fold of like knowing how good it is.
Right. And we all know that chicken right now, man, it's kind of having a moment. Like, what are your thoughts with Taco Bell and them stepping into your territory a little bit?
Yeah, I have a soft spot for Taco Bell. My cat is actually named Taco Bell. I got him when I was at Yum, Jen. Like, I was a Taco Bell fan. You'd have asked me 10 years ago, the brand that I would just like kill to work at, it was Taco Bell. And I had a couple of opportunities where I thought it might happen, but life decisions took me other places. But Taco Bell, I have cat, Taco Bell. Taco Bell Taco Bell's doing very well. I think that the interesting thing about Taco Bell is they have more restaurants than Zaxby's does. Their per restaurant sales are lower, but they have more of them. As a system, they are higher. But they also have multiple day parts. And so Taco Bell getting into chicken isn't super concerning. I think our crossover is there are people that go to Zaxby's that also go to Taco Bell, but I'm not concerned about their chicken. I know what Taco Bell can do with chicken. And in terms of how much marketing dollars they're spending on it and the number of things they spend dollars on, I don't know how they're going to make a super impact in chicken.
Yeah.
But I love Taco Bell. I had Taco Bell for dinner last night.
Oh, girl, I
Okay.
love Taco Bell. And I've
I
got a
love Taco Bell.
15-year-old daughter that is obsessed. And we saw at the airport this weekend, a gentleman had a Taco Bell hat on, and that was just like a moment for her.
Taco Bell was when I was at Yum, it was such a cool brand because they were doing things like early influencer marketing. They had the Taco Bell squad, and they were really the first to do that. And again, like I took what I learned observing Taco Bell, and when I was at Yum, I had mentors at Taco Bell, and now I'm like kind of using that. And Zaxby's is a little later to the game, but the guts of it are the same, is that customers want to hear other people talking about your brand more than they want to hear your brand talking about your brand. And so we're trying to get on that flywheel too. But Taco Bell is an awesome brand. They have such a dedicated fan base. I am one. I named my pet after Taco Bell, for crying out loud. After them getting into chicken, I'm like, I don't worry about them. They don't keep me up at night.
I'm telling you, like, give it 10 years and you may not be able to handle Taco Bell anymore. But I think that something you shared is so important for the audience or listeners to hear, which was you took what you learned somewhere else and you're trying to take that and apply that where you are today. And that's the power of making those pivots and why that's so important. The generations before us would stay very loyal and they were so proud. I've been with this company 25, 30 years. But I think that can somewhat hurt you. I mean, I'm sure there's benefits to it too. I just haven't been anywhere that long, so I'm not even going to try to list the benefits. But I do think that there's so much to learn when you step into another organization, whether that's just learning to navigate the internal walls, but also what you take away and can apply to maybe that next role, as you just shared.
In 2025, and I say this all the time to my team, it is very hard to come up with brand new to world ideas. I mean, we live in an age where we have more information in our square little phone than the rest of history has had.
It's crazy.
And new to world ideas, I don't know how they exist. So you just have to be able to pour through things and just get inspiration. Like, I am super inspired by what Chili's is doing right now. I worked for the CMO of Chili's. I worked for the CEO of Brinker, who owns Chili's. Like, I've worked for essentially the whole Chili's team, or with them. And they took a brand that people weren't going to anymore. And now it's like the fastest growing sit down restaurant. And they leaned into something that has been around for years. They leaned into the triple dipper box, and people want I call them Scooby snacks. Like, people just want to fill up on Scooby snacks. I know I do. I love a girl dinner. And you can take something like that and say, well, how would my brand do that? And it's not copy paste, but like, again, there are great ideas out there. And when you see something working, you just have to think, how can my brand do something similar?
Yeah.
Right. And get inspiration. And again, I'm not too proud to say that was a great idea. Same. Like, I want to do that.
Right.
But you have to put your brand spin on it and all of that, so it's authentic. But I think that's important too, is just constantly be seeing what these people are doing, be part of your consumer set. Like, I'm a proud fast foodie. I get fast food and I look to see what people are doing, and you can take nuggets of things and just say, how would this work for me?
Yeah, I agree. I think, listen, like, girl dinner is nothing new. That's just a new spin on what I used to call poo-poos. Me and my sister would call it poo-poos. She lived in Hawaii, so that's probably a reference.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. But, and then before that was tapas. I think that you're right. It's kind of like rinse, repeat, reuse, refresh. It's really hard to come up with something that new. Shoot, when I think about fashion today, 90s fashion is back, and look at that, we're vintage now. I think that what our takeaway here, or at least from the audience perspective, I hope, is that they realize like the inspiration that you are and how you came from a very difficult background, as you referenced, but you use that to really help you and steer you in this direction, which gave you this grit that you truly do have. So now you're at a place where you're a senior executive on the marketing side. And I would love to hear about your leadership style.
Yeah, I am very true to myself, I guess you could say. I think people who work for me would say, people who work for me and know me personally would say very similar things. I'm not one of those people that can put on the mask at work and then come home and just easily shake it off. I'm one of those people that I want people to like coming to work. I want people to feel empowered. I want people to feel supported. And so even though I am people's coaches, I am really there. And what I tell people is like, me doing things is only one person doing things. I need to enable all of you to do things to have like exponential power and do more. So it can't be me on this pedestal chirping around. I tell my director of advertising, who is super talented, her name's Casey Ryan, look her up, she's amazing. Worked with her for 10 years at Yum, brought her to Zaxby's. It was the best decision I ever made. I tell her, like, you need to tell me what you need help with to let me do it. I am not too good to do anything. She was reviewing like trafficking sheets or something for media. And I said, Casey, you need to teach me how to do T-sheets, because she's like, you don't have time to do that. Like, you have too many other important things to do. And I was like, my most important thing is to make sure that you can do your job. And I say that for anyone on my team. Let me know how I can help you. If it's removing a barrier, if it's literally helping you do T-sheets so that you can move on to something else. Because the higher up you go, it's not that you do less work, but you're accountable for more people's work, which is the work. I'm accountable for their work. And so I think that that's where I come from, is true like servant leadership, which maybe it's because I was brought up at the school of Young leadership, which is like, your leaders are here for you. You're not here to work for your leaders. And I think that's a pretty special thing. And it's honestly why I stayed at Yum for as long as I did. And when I left Yum, I went to go work for people who were former Yum people and had that similar, how can I enable you? How can I empower you? And I think it makes a big difference to culture. I'm just repeating what people have said, but and it's a huge compliment. It's one of my favorite compliments, is like the air of Zaxby's changed when I came in, of people having fun, people supporting each other. Like, we sell chicken. We don't, like, luckily we're not brain surgeons. We sell chicken and it'll be okay. Just having that positivity. And that's something I hopefully will always hold on to. And I always say, I won't go to an organization that is counter to that.
Yeah.
I can't play the part. I can't play a different part. It's just the part that I was born to play. That, and, hopefully one day Eliza Doolittle and a stage version of My Fair Lady. Those are the two parts I were born to play. But that's how I come at leadership, especially, and it's not like even being a woman. I think that men and women do have different leadership styles, but I don't change that. Yeah, I don't feel a need to soften. I'm just naturally this way because I'm a woman, I guess is what I would say.
I love that. That's great. I mean, you exemplify like positivity, and you radiate.
I don't know, my husband might not say that all the time, but
Well,
I try.
different. I think that this is really informative, and it's wonderful kind of to just hear your perspective on your career journey, but also just the industry at large. And before I pivot into like my last and final question, which we like to end our moments on, I have to just ask about boxing. And the only reason I'm very interested in it, but I was literally just turning over like my ice pack because I dropped a weight on my hand today, a 45 pounds. But boxing, you are you're going to be getting a certificate, or what was?
Yeah. So I started boxing about a year and a half ago. I've always been into fitness. When I was younger, before I had my daughter, I was a Pure Barre instructor. Again, it goes back. I love teaching people. I love interacting with people. And so even though I've always been like a very professional person, my husband's like, you don't need to do this for a job. I'm like, I want to. But I've been boxing for about a year and a half. Absolutely love it. If you're looking to get in like the best shape of your life, like box, because it is exhausting. But I actually went to a different studio and was, in class, and like then I went up and talked to somebody and they're like, would you ever want to become a boxing instructor? And again, it wasn't on my radar. I'm like, I'm too busy. I'm a marketing leader. I have a almost 6-year-old. I got too much going on, but I just love it. And I think that even though I'm a mom and I have a big job, you have to carve out those moments for things that you love and things
Yeah,
that are just for you.
I agree.
And that's definitely a just for me moment.
That's great. Where are you at? Knuckle Up, or where are you?
No, so I box at a gym in Atlanta called Pepper Boxing, which is like those people are scary.
Oh,
But I'm getting certified to teach at Rumble Boxing, which actually is owned by the same kind of like company as Cycle Bar and Club Pilates and a lot of those more approachable
yeah.
class styles. So yeah, I'm in process of becoming a Rumble Boxing instructor. Woo.
That's so cool. Yeah, we have a Rumble up here, and I've been in the city in New York and gone to Rumble many times with clients.
Yeah.
So, oh, that's great. I love it. Listen, wellness is a significant part of what we do. You have to do what you love and give back to your kind of own sense of like self. And
Mhm.
so, if boxing is what it is for you, maybe that's what it is today, and maybe 2 years from now it's something different. But you got to prioritize that. So, I applaud it. I think it's great. It's
Yeah, it's fun.
fun. All right, so moving on. When did you realize that you were a corporate baddie?
Oh my gosh. For a long time, I had imposter syndrome. Like I talked about where I grew up. And I'm like, oh, people are going to find out that, I'm this little small town girl that and I didn't feel like a corporate baddie at all. And I think the moment that I truly felt the most confident was, oh, are you still there?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, you went away. Sorry, I'll start
Oh,
over.
you're good.
The window went away. So the moment that I feel like I really embraced the corporate baddie side of me was when I finally left KFC. And for a long time, like I had a huge future at KFC, but I had almost convinced myself that I couldn't be more than a leader at KFC.
Got it.
And I think when I truly embraced that I could be successful elsewhere and have this big career pivot into retail and go and run 3 iconic brands in a new space, it gave me like such a boost of confidence that I could be more than what I had limited myself to believe I could be. And I think that's something for everyone is the self-talk that you give yourself. And it's I am successful here. I couldn't be successful anywhere else. All my friends and this social network I have tied to work are here. I'm gonna lose it if I go somewhere else. And that's just so limiting. And really, there are a lot of circumstances that limit people, but the biggest one I think that can limit you is yourself and how you talk to yourself and what you believe you can do.
So true. Best thing I've ever heard. I mean, there is limitless possibilities.
Yeah,
Yeah.
my mom used to say if you don't like something, you can either change it or change the way you feel about it. And if you don't change, then you just have to keep changing how you feel. And that is going to lead to something else too, right? It's going to lead to disappointment at work. It's going to lead to grudges. It's going to lead to comparing yourself to other people. And why didn't I get that promotion? Or why do they get paid more than me? And you just can't get into that cycle. So you just got to change it
Yeah. I mean,
and empower yourself to change it.
Yeah, you were in a comfort zone. You got to get out of the uncomfortable.
Exactly.
Couldn't agree more. Well, that is a great corporate baddie moment share. So thank you. And Allie, thank you so much for getting on the podcast with me today and really opening up and sharing your life journey. It was very interesting. It's also very funny in terms of like your cat Taco Bell. Thank you for
Oh
sharing
my
it.
gosh. I'm surprised he didn't make an appearance. Maybe one of these days.
It would have been great in time.
Or like prance along.
Yeah.
No, he's a frequent visitor on my team's meetings for sure. But no, I appreciate it. And I hope that somebody gets something from it. If nothing else, you can get inspiration for your cat's next name. It's a great name for a cat.
They're absolutely going to take away a lot of time. So thank you, Allie. And thank you to our listeners. Please tune in to the next episode of The Corporate Baddie.